All right, let's jump right into the study of angels. We're going way beyond the typical images of wings and harps here. We're going to break down a really detailed theological framework, what one pastor calls God's invisible army, and look at their structure, their purpose, and their incredible power. And just to give you a sense of the kind of power we're talking about, listen to this. It's an account from a German officer during World War I. He describes seeing this mysterious cavalry, all in white, just advancing right through heavy gunfire, totally unharmed. It caused his entire army to completely break and run in terror. It's a wild story, but it really sets the stage for this idea of a powerful, unseen presence at work in the world. So that's really the big question we're tackling. If the Bible is right, and there's this invisible realm just filled with these powerful beings, then what exactly is their job? What's their function in the grand scheme of everything? Okay, first things first, and this is absolutely crucial to understand. The angelic realm is described as anything but chaotic. It's a place of incredible order and authority, all built on a very distinct hierarchy. Probably the easiest way for us to wrap our heads around this is with an analogy. Just think about a big corporation, or even the military. You've got clear ranks and levels of authority, right? A president and a VP, a general and a colonel. Well, this teaching suggests that the angelic world works in a very similar way, with its own divinely created structure. And this hierarchy is surprisingly detailed. At the very top, you have the cherubim. In fact, Lucifer's original title was the Anointed Cherub. Right below them, you've got the seraphim, and then the archangel. It's interesting, the Bible only ever gives us one name for an archangel, Michael. And then there are these other ranks with names that kind of hint at their jobs, like thrones, dominions, and principalities. The big takeaway here is that this isn't just some random group of beings. It's a highly organized force. So, you have this incredibly organized structure. What's their number one priority? Well, according to this study, their foundational purpose, their highest calling, is their ministry directed right toward God Himself. And this ministry is really broken down into two main jobs. The first is probably what you'd expect, just constant, nonstop worship. But the second is a little more specific. It's a kind of priestly service, like they're attending to the very throne of God. And this worship is not a quiet, passive thing. The scriptures in Isaiah and Revelation describe seraphim literally crying out, "Holy, holy, holy," day and night. In another vision, there's this massive host, we're talking a number so big you can't even count it, singing a new song, declaring, "Worthy is the Lamb." This is their primary, around-the-clock occupation. Now, besides worship, another key role for angels is to be messengers. But the teaching points out this really fascinating and honestly often overlooked moment where they did this, and it involves one of the most foundational events in the entire Old Testament. When you see this number, what do you think of? The Ten Commandments, right? Given to Moses on Mount Sinai. It is an absolute cornerstone of the entire Judeo-Christian tradition. And here's where it gets really interesting. The story in Exodus is very clear. God wrote the law with His own finger. But the question raised in this study is, okay, who were the couriers? Who physically carried that message down the mountain to the people? The answer, which you can find in several New Testament passages like these, is that the law was actually delivered or ordained by angels. They were the divine messengers who were tasked with bringing God's most sacred laws to humanity. I mean, that one little detail totally elevates their role from just being observers to being active participants in God's revelation. Okay, so they worship, they deliver messages, but this framework gives angels a third major role. They act as agents of God's governmental rule right here on earth. And this is where their power starts to feel very, very real. So this teaching lays out three key governmental jobs for them. First, they restrain evil. A perfect example is in Sodom when the angels struck a violent mob completely blind. Second, they control nature, something we see on a massive scale in the book of Revelation. And third, they influence nations. The book of Daniel even gives them a specific title for this, the Watchers, who observe and act as history unfolds. And to really wrap your mind around the kind of power they have over nature, just look at this sequence from the book of Revelation. It's angels who are sounding the trumpets and pouring out these bowls of judgment, unleashing events on a cosmic level. They're shown not just as messengers, but as the enforcers of divine will on a planetary scale. It's intense. So we've talked about the big cosmic governmental stuff, but now the focus gets really narrow. really personal. We're talking about the ministry of angels directly to Jesus Christ during his time on earth. I mean, just think about it. Angels were there at pretty much every key moment of Christ's story. They announced his birth, they strengthened him after his temptation in the desert, an angel rolled away the stone from his tomb. Two angels showed up at his ascension to promise he'd be back, and prophecy even says they're going to be with him when he returns. They are woven into his story from the very beginning to the very end. But this leads to what is maybe one of the most powerful points in this entire study. Despite being there for everything else, there were exactly 0 angels recorded at the cross. And it wasn't because they weren't available. Jesus himself said he could call on legions of them. And we're not talking small numbers. A single biblical legion is noted as 12,000. Their absence was intentional. It was a necessary part of the sacrifice. He had to do it alone. So after all that, you have to ask, just how important are angels to the whole biblical story? Well, this number kind of says it all. Across the Old and New Testaments, angels are mentioned 273 times. They are not a minor detail. They are a constant, active presence through the entire narrative. And so that really leaves us with one last big thought. This teaching paints a picture of a reality that is just teeming with invisible, powerful beings who are operating with incredible structure and purpose, worshiping, governing, and intervening. So the final question is, if you accept that framework, how does that change the way you see everything? How does it reshape your view of history, of current events, and of the very world around you?